Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, figure out what's going to happen this week. It's a short week, we'll go over that very soon. But with all that being said and done, let's jump into it. The market closing in just a few minutes here. But regardless, if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. It does help a lot. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. The link is down below in the description. $3 a month. Again, intraday. I share my intraday thoughts on Tesla pretty much here for my members. If you're interested in that, hearing my thoughts and updates and things like that as the stock is moving during the day, the trading day itself, link is below. Anyway, moving into it. Market's closing in about 8 minutes. Tesla so far looking like it'll be closing somewhere around this level of 2.5%, which is going to be putting us at about $241.50 per share, which compared to the market is a nice outperformance. So Tesla kind of just once again doing the opposite of the market. Like I always say this, right? I tell you guys often, not always, but often enough to where it's not just like a one-off thing. Tesla likes to do its own thing. Like it pretty hot. Like half the time it feels like it's just doing the opposite of what the market's doing. If the market's green, Tesla's red. If the market's red, Tesla's green. That happens too often, in all honesty. So that's why when some people say compare, you always have to look at QQQ, you always have to look at SPY to know what Tesla will do next. Not fully wrong, but not fully right either. So regardless, with that being said, beautiful outperformance today on the day with Tesla. While most other EVs are actually down on the day, like Lucid's down 3%, Rivian's down almost 7%, etc. So what do we see moving forward? By the way, don't forget, Thursday, markets, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe market is closed on Thursday for American Thanksgiving. I'm in Canada. That's why I'm kind of like, but I'm pretty sure it's closed on Thursday and it's half a day on Friday, which usually means that selling options on these kind of weeks is pretty good because you get pretty much free theta days of just theta decay on those days on Thursday and pretty much Friday. So it's really good. There's much lower chance of it getting to that specific price target unless of course you wanted to. But regardless, moving into Tesla. So there's two things or a few things to talk about here. Let me move this over here so I can use it as a potential thing that I want to look at because I like to refer to this just sometimes, to see how it acts. But nonetheless, the main thing to look at on the daily is the fact that, we talked about how we're ping-ponging between the 21 EMA and the 50-day moving average. And then until we essentially break above one of them and start closing and holding above, we're pretty much in no man's land. That's what's happening today. We are actually breaking above the 50-day moving average, which is this kind of brownish, reddish line. And so far, it looks like, we're probably going to be closing above it. There's still 6 minutes, but I highly doubt we're going to sell off that aggressively. Now, with that being said, we do have NVIDIA earnings after market. So keep that in mind. That is pretty important, and it might actually affect Tesla because they are kind of loosely similar in a sense, right? They kind of trade roughly in the same general vicinity of the market. So if NVIDIA crushes, for instance, Tesla is probably going to start going up towards the 100-day moving average, which is going to be around $248, if not maybe even $250, right? Somewhere around there. Wouldn't shock me whatsoever if that happens, maybe even tomorrow, honestly. However, if NVIDIA doesn't do so well, Tesla might finally, not finally, but it might come back down below the 50-day moving average, kind of like what it did over here, right? We closed above it, and then of course it was a false breakout or a false close, if you will, and we came right back down below it the next day. So take that for what it's worth. This is why I say holding is important. Not just closing above, but holding. So for instance, if tomorrow, let's say Tesla is red for, whatever reason, if we come down to the 50-day moving average, which is at about $200 and almost $39 per share, which is, pretty much 240 roughly, we'll say, right? And we turn that level into a support. So we come back down and instead of breaking below it and then closing below it again, kind of like what we did back over here, we actually come back, retest it successfully, and we do not close it below it. And in fact, we actually bounce off of it. That will be really good. And that's kind of what you want to see. That would be pretty bullish. That's what I would want to be seeing as a bull moving forward. And that to me will pretty much almost not obviously guarantee, but increase the likelihood substantially of us moving up to the 100-day moving average, if not the 250s, which is where things will really start getting interesting, as we talked about in our video yesterday. That's the level I'll be looking at more intently, right? Let's take a quick look at options flow here. We looked at it in the morning, but let's see if anything has changed whatsoever. And you can see it was a lot different in the morning. It was substantially more green bubbles here. There was one big red one over here. But with that, actually, no, they're still here. The reason it looks like this now is because a massive whale, not a massive whale, but a bigger print came in, 870K in premium, 240 calls expiring November 24th, which is pretty much this Friday. So nice call coming in here, pretty decent size, almost $1 million in premium. I wouldn't say that's like a massive whale, but it's still something respectable. So clearly people are bullish moving forward for the rest of this week. So we'll see how that plays out, right? We'll see how that plays out. But the main thing I'll be looking at is, of course, this. Close above this, fantastic, the 50-day moving average. Do we come back down and retest it successfully? That's going to be great. Or do we just go straight up to the 100-day, right? One of those two things, in my opinion, will happen. I don't think we're going to close back below it unless NVIDIA completely whiffs on earnings entirely. That's the only condition, in my opinion. But assuming NVIDIA doesn't just completely destroy its earnings in a bad way, I think either we come down tomorrow, retest this moving average, the 240s roughly, bounce off of it, and then make our way back up to about this 100-day moving average to about 248 to 250, or we go straight to it right away, right? I think one of those two situations will happen personally. However, that's where things will start getting interesting, right? As we get to the 250s, that's where a lot of resistance is going to come in. You can see in the past, let me go ahead and remove this 100-day moving average for now, but you can see in the past, we've had a lot of resistances around the 250-ish area, right? We have supports over here, support here, resistance over here, a lot of trading happening around here. If we increase the volume profile, you can see it substantially starts to increase in the high 240s, and especially once we get into the 250s, that is like where the highest volume is in this general vicinity. So it is quite an area of resistance, right? That will be a pretty hard area to just casually break through. On top of that, like I said yesterday, it's the top of the channel of this bull flag, right? Which is great. I do expect us to break out at some point, but it, in theory, shouldn't be just an easy thing to do either. But I do think it'll happen at some point. Just, is it going to be right now coming up, or will it take a bit longer? Maybe sometime in December, let's say, right? But nonetheless, right, take this into account, the 100-day moving average, the 250 to 255-ish area, just as a typical resistance from previous, instances, right? Even back here, you can see, right? The volume profile, of course, the bull flag being the top of the channel of the bull flag, which will act as a resistance in theory, of course, until we finally at some point break through, which I think we will, right? We have this blue line over here, which was that massive channel, which in theory should also act as a resistance. That's a little bit higher. That's closer to 260, but nonetheless, right, that is something to consider as well. So there's a lot of turbulence up ahead of us, right? And I really wouldn't be surprised if we at least kind of peek our head into the clouds, if that makes sense. But I don't know. I'll be surprised if we just blast right through it, just straight up. It's not impossible. And again, we made the comparison back to over here, where this movement that we had over here is very similar to what we're having over here. Massive run up, right? Come back down for the touch point 2 here. Come back down for touch point 2 right here. Move up, touch point 3, and we come back down with a gap down during earnings, come back down, touch point 4 potentially, right? As you can argue. Again, we made this argument that technically, maybe we didn't do touch point 4, but this also over here can be an outlier candle that did, obviously close below the flag. Can't just be, considering it's only one candle, it can just be an outlier. And then of course from there, massive rally, some sideways consolidation, kind of what we're doing right now, which is why I wouldn't be surprised if we do a little bit more of that. And then we come up to the bull flag, got resisted a little bit for about a day or two, and then we broke through. And that's kind of what I wouldn't be surprised if that maybe happens as well. That's not impossible if we just follow this pattern. But again, usually with these things, it doesn't just completely copy paste it. It usually just rhymes. So just because maybe we don't blast through it this quickly doesn't mean we won't do it still relatively soon-ish. So that's kind of just the thing to pay attention to, right? But ultimately, I am definitely more bullish and bearish here on Tesla, right? It's just a matter of, do we just blast through it? But those are the main things I'll be looking at, right? It kind of comes down to NVIDIA earnings, like I said, which should be coming out any second now. That's okay. I thought that was it for a second. Should be coming out any second now or any minute now. But again, that's kind of what I'll be looking at. That's where things will start getting interesting once we start touching the 250s to 260s. But like 250 to 255, in my opinion, is where I think it'll get really interesting. Now, with that being said, that's all the bullish aspects of Tesla. Let's talk about some aspects that can be a little bit bearish. Things that are maybe not so great, right? Maybe things that are worth considering or paying attention to, or being a little bit worried or skeptical about, and that's going to be this. So for Tesla specifically, there's the potential that we're setting up a double top pattern here on the 65 or 1 hour chart, right? So it'll look something like this. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. You can argue it's from back here or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is, there's a chance that we're doing something like this, essentially creating a double top pattern that looks roughly like this, right? That is a possibility. And the only way this gets nullified is if we pretty much break about 245-ish, slightly higher ideally, but about 245-ish is what we break. With that being said, if we only go slightly above that, let's say we go up to 247, 248 roughly, which is where the 100-day moving average is. Let's say that's all we do, right? Let's say tomorrow even, right? Still technically creating a double top, technically we're still roughly within the vicinity. It's not like super broken just yet. But another thing that will be I'll be looking at very closely is the RSI, because if we make a higher high and the RSI doesn't make a higher high on the actual RSI over here, which would be essentially breaking above 82, almost 83 on the RSI, which I don't think it will. If we do come up to about 247, 248, which is where the 100-day moving average is, I think we'll create a bearish divergence on the 65/1 hour charts. That's not ideal. That is going to be something to be cautious about, but that will also kind of come into play with what I said, how I believe, as we get close to the 250s and potentially even into the 250s, we should in theory find some pretty decent resistance. That should potentially bring us back down at least a little bit, maybe a bit of a cool off along with the market before we make our way past that, right? Maybe let's say sometime in December. Not impossible. But that's kind of what I'll be looking at right now. This is like the bearish side, right? There's a lot more bullish than bearish aspects here, at least in my opinion. But if there is a bearish thing to look at, in my opinion, at least it's this right here, with the potential bearish divergence setting up if we do make a bit of a higher high over here on the RSI, on the stock chart, but the RSI, of course, makes a lower high. That is a classic bearish divergence. So that's something that I'd be, very carefully looking at as well. That's not something that would be ideal. So I would expect a cool off following something like that. Taking a quick look at the market, because again, the indices still potentially have, ways to affect Tesla. QQQ, massive tear, absolutely astronomical rally, but it is overbought. And we are setting an inside day candle where essentially we traded within yesterday's full trading range and we didn't exit one way or the other. So you can see this candle is completely enveloped by this one, right? So inside day, usually it's a sign of a potential, indecision / reversal. So that's not good, right? This market over here, the QQQ, can potentially look for a retrace here just off of these two candles right here, because it is technically a bearish situation. So take that for what it's worth as well. And then, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Same thing with SPY inside day as well. So markets are looking a little bit, toppy, right? Overbought as well. They're looking like they want to relax a little bit here. And that's what they did today, but potentially even more so. So we'll see. But that's the main thing I'll be looking at for Tesla. Again, I'm definitely more bullish than bearish, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we get close to, if not slightly into 250s. I expect some pretty decent resistance there, and I would expect some kind of cool off. Another potential option is the fact that what we do is we come up to about this, general-ish level, let's say 250 to make it simple, and then we cool off, come back down to retest the 50-day moving average, which will be somewhere around here, potentially even a little bit lower towards the 21 EMA, which will be only ever so slightly lower. And then from there, I think we'll cool off. That'll be the cool off period, and then we bounce from here. And I think from there, we'll essentially make our way and break out of this bull flag. This is kind of roughly what I would personally be expecting for Tesla moving forward for the next few weeks, I guess you can say. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing, and that's kind of what I am expecting as of right now. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. If you enjoyed the video, of course, as usual, don't forget to hit that like button. The daily looks great. The RSI still looks fine to me for the most part. Nothing too crazy. MACD still looking pretty good. Again, I think Tesla's overall bullish. I really do. But it doesn't mean that, we can't get a bit of a cool off, at least somewhat soon. But with all that being said, thanks for watching. I'll see you for the next one. Peace.